Today, I'm delighted to welcome Ashish Parulkar, Global Head of Talent Acquisition Analytics at Amazon, to the Digital HR Leaders podcast. Ashish, thanks for joining me today. To start the conversation off, could you share a little bit about your career journey that has led you to where you are today in your role at Amazon?
Thank you, David, first of all, for having me on your podcast and all the great work you do for the field. I'm a big fan and really glad to be on your show today. So a little bit about me. So when I did electrical engineering and data science, I did not anticipate being in the people analytics space, but early part of my career was exploration of different roles like data science, marketing, product, and then it was really some key mentoring conversations that drove me to where I am. And I'll talk to you about the one about people analytics. So I had been working in product for about 10 years, really enjoying the talking to the customers, understanding their needs, building tangible things that help people and make a positive impact, and also bring in technology and analytics to do the good work in that space. And I had a few options for different roles, and I was having a conversation with my mentor on like which one should I go with. And she said, all these roles are great, but Ashish, like when I see sparkle in your eyes is when you're talking about analytics and when you're talking about people. And oh, by the way, there is a role for that called people analytics. And I was like, wait, HR? And, she caught me by surprise. And, it's funny how sometimes others know you better than you do. And she said, you're trying to change your company's hiring strategies and performance management, and it's not even your day job. And you bring so much energy to those work streams that you should really look into it. I respect her a lot, so I looked into it, and more I learned, more excited I got, and that's what brings me here today.
Well, you've hit to me, and actually a very, very prescient advice that you got there. So you were clearly a natural fit for people analytics. So when you found out more about people analytics, what really attracted you to the field? And maybe an add-on question there is, what advantages do you feel that you had from the working outside HR, outside people analytics before, some of the skill sets that you could bring into the field?
No, that's a great question. I think about this as in three factors. One is purpose, then the ability to make impact, the scale of impact you can have, and then do you have the skill sets to actually make that impact, right? So if you think about purpose, things like fairness go deep with people, right? Everybody, I think, has a story of where they felt being wronged and things were not really meritorious, and so on. And I have that story too. So when you're working in a space that can help people get opportunities that are based on their merit and things that are more fair, I think there's a sense of purpose to it and sense of mission to it that you may not find in a lot of other spaces. And for me, that is the number one factor that got me interested in people analytics. And then there is, I know there has been people working in this space for decades now, but I still see this field in its nascency. So when the field is in its nascency, you can make that 10x and 100x impact. The example I give is if you were in marketing in early 2000s, digital marketing was just starting, you were making that 10x, 100x impact, whereas now maybe there's more optimization. And with people analytics, I do feel that we can make massive impact because so much still has to be figured out. And then finally, I felt, to your point, some of the skills I'd gained in the past could be helpful to be introduced in this field and make a difference. And we'll talk about some examples of how that has come to fruition. But my early exposure to data science really helps. The thing I love about data science is it helps you separate what really matters versus what doesn't, right? And in people space, people have lots of opinions, and strong opinions. They feel like, hey, I know this is the right way to hire people. I know this is the right way to do performance management, so on and so forth. So separating out what matters versus not matter, that was really key and that can be brought over to people analytics, right? In terms of product, right? Uh, Understanding what users say versus what do they mean, what do they really need, and how do you make the user interface easy to drive change, right? That's a really important skill that I can bring to people analytics space as recruiters are doing recruiting or executives are making org decisions and so on and so forth. How do you make the complexity on the back end about all the modeling come to life in a simple format to inform the right decision? So, you know, now looking back, it seems all planned, but it wasn't probably, right? There's a lot of exploration and you pick up skills that you can draw from.
Yeah, and I think last thing you mentioned there, so important. Thinking like a marketeer when it comes to, turning the insights that we create from people analytics into outcomes. And the way you do that, of course, is by changing behavior, giving people a tool that they can use easily to support their decision making. And I think that's a challenge for the field as well, which we may talk about moving forward as well. So, just for the benefit of listeners, because I know the answer to this, Ashish. So you it was at Capital One that you first got into people analytics, and when was that? That was prior to the pandemic, I think.
2019? Yeah, 2019, I think. Yeah,
2019, and then you moved to Amazon in
yeah,
2022.
yeah.
So you've been at Amazon 3 years now. We're going to talk about the work that you're doing at Amazon. Now, obviously, everyone listening to this show will know that Amazon is one of the largest organizations in the world. And I can only imagine what the scope and volume of hiring will be. And obviously, in your role as global head of talent acquisition analytics, you're looking at all the data that supports that process. How does the scale and scope of talent acquisition at Amazon differ from your previous roles?
So scale is obviously, we are hiring hundreds of thousands of hourly employees, tens of thousands of corporate employees each year, right? And that might be the size of entire companies in many spaces. But I do think the biggest difference is having skin in the game. What I mean by that is, um, as my team is building models and putting them into production that drive marketing, that drive the funnel for our hiring. So, for example, in hourly hiring, if our models are wrong or if they are down because of system issue, that directly impacts if we hire the exact number of people we need to hire at a location, which impacts if packages get delivered to people on time, right? Which impacts the bottom line of Amazon. So that direct accountability for something that you do that impacts the company's bottom line is very different, right? In many other places, you might have people on the team doing reporting or bringing interesting insights. Then the operations team have to take those insights and make it a reality. Here, teams are structured for single-threaded ownership, and what you build, you put it into production, and it affects things in market, right? Even on the corporate side, we ran 6 million assessments last year, right? And this system has to be on globally 24/7. And if it's down for an hour, it can affect tens of thousands of applicants in uh, lots of different businesses like Prime, AWS, devices, and you might lose out on a really important candidate who could build the next big thing, right? So I think that accountability is a big difference. But with that accountability also comes lots of benefits that make it a pleasure to work here, right? With scale, you can actually do advanced analytics and science and show what matters versus what doesn't matter. What are the myths versus what are the realities? With the underlying tech stack that AWS offers us, you can have sensors everywhere and make sure no data is lost in the ether, right? You have reliable, always available data, which is massive if you're trying to do science, and also the company culture being that of data backed decision making is really critical. That was one of the main questions I had when I was switching from the business side over to people analytics is like, okay, even if you come up with great insights, are people, our executives, our companies really going to make a change? Or are they going to say, like, yeah, in theory, data backed decision making, all of us should do it, but in my unique situation, it doesn't apply, right? My judgment is, more important, and there is tremendous room for judgment always with people, right? But there are things where that numbers can get you more right than wrong, and we should leverage both.
Yeah, I think obviously the scale of what you're doing at Amazon, particularly around the hourly paid workers, I guess is the multiplier effect that you can have as a talent acquisition analytics team on the process in terms of the ability to identify, hire, and process candidates, and then obviously employees and workers into the organization. And as you said, if you get it right, then you could have a huge impact both from a people and a financial perspective. If you get it wrong, it can be the other way around. So I see it's probably a
Yes.
highly
Yes.
can be highly pressurized, but as you said, one of the things that it sounds like you really wanted to do with getting into analytics and the people side is to be able to make a difference, and it sounds like you're doing that.
Uh, it's a great, I think the best things about working at Amazon is you get to solve some of the most complex and problems in the world, and if you do, then they make a huge impact. So I think that's fun environment to be in.
And in terms of, again, we don't necessarily need to get into the numbers and such, but we
Yeah,
know everyone knows that
yeah,
you're hiring a lot of hourly
yes.
paid workers at Amazon around the globe and all those distribution centers. How do you balance the need for accuracy in hiring numbers while managing costs effectively?
Yeah, it would be pretty logical to say that, like, hey, I need to get the number of people I need to get, right? And to make sure I get that, I'm going to add some buffer in my system, right? It's really more important to get the hires, and I am willing to pay some additional cost to make sure I get the hires, right? Um, but in reality, there is a missing variable in this equation, which is hiring is very much boom bust, right? It's not very predictable, both in our hourly space and corporate space. So if you build a system which has more buffer to get the accuracy, then you're gonna both be less accurate when the boom bust happens and more costly. So what we really need to build is a system that is highly responsive to change, right? And that's the thing that's going to help you achieve both high accuracy and low cost. So just to give you an idea, over the last couple of years, we have cut down the cost in our hourly hiring space by 50%, while our hiring accuracy has gone from high 70s to high 90s, right? So we've both, again, like talk about like scale of impact, right? 50% reduction and then dramatic improvement in accuracy. And the way we do that at Amazon, uh, we design our processes as a series of mechanisms. So, in the hiring space, you might have funnel and marketing and incentives. Each of these are mechanisms with inputs, outputs, and a feedback loop, right? And then you have a chain of mechanisms that turn all your inputs into an output. So it's really important to map out this full process. And when you do, you realize three different opportunities. One is there'll be tons of gaps in your mechanism. There's a ton of data that you haven't captured, and a ton of things that you haven't given a proper feedback loop for, and a ton of things you could automate that you haven't. Then you have an opportunity to optimize each mechanism at a time. So, for example, I might optimize marketing, and I might optimize my funnel. And then you have to do the system thinking uh, to show like how all of this connects and do the multivariate optimization at the system level, right? The world doesn't move one thing at a time. The world is multivariate. So uh, all those three things together is how you build a highly responsive system. And that highly responsive system, then just to give you a scale of responsiveness, last year around the holiday period, we were tracking our highest week of hiring was going to be 40,000 hires globally. And we have been prepping for that for months. And 3 weeks before that, that peak week, we were told that it's going to be 63,000 hires, right? And usually that would be a mad scramble. And how are you going to scale up your entire operation, and how are you going to hire all the recruiting professionals and so on and so forth, and call center and so like all these roles, and get them up to speed? We have 3 weeks, right? And we were able to entirely do this thing through our variable levers, just moving some dials, and get 95% plus accuracy for those 63K hires around the world, right? So that is what you're building. If I had built a system with some additional buffer, okay, really want to get some additional buffer to get those 40K hires, there's no way I could have done 63K, you know, and then we would have missed both on accuracy and on cost.
That's really impressive. I mean, as you said, I mean, straight away when you said at the start, you reduce cost by 50%, you improved accuracy from 70s to 90s, and then finding out a few weeks before when you're planning for recruiting 40,000 that you've actually got to recruit 63,000, which is quite a big increase, let's be honest about it. But having the systems and processes in place that you can flex, and you've got a number of dials that you can turn up or turn down, I guess, as you said, marketing's one of those. Presumably you can bring in more recruiters if you need to bring it in as well, and I know a lot, and I know a lot of it is supported by underlying technology, I guess, which is easier to scale maybe than just looking at a people perspective. But no, really, really, really impressive. And again, as much as you're able to share, Ashish, how how big's your team that gets involved in this and supporting the talent acquisition team with the analytics, and maybe we'll talk about the skills a bit later of those people as well. But also, how closely are you working with the talent acquisition leaders in the business as well?
So the team size will give people a sticker shock, right? Like it's 450 people with 100 scientists, 250 engineers, and you know, uh, in most companies, right, you wouldn't have the luxury of such an investment. But I think so. It's a privilege to get the opportunity to lead an organization like this. But it's really with respect to the scale of Amazon's operation, and the accountability that you have to run production level systems that take everything from putting all the sensors in place, collecting the data, doing the data management, doing the reporting, science to do the insights, turn those science into production models that actually drive Amazon's operations, right? So that's really important. Um, I would say we work very closely with our operations leaders, and our operations, ultimately we are hiring for the business, but our key customers are really our operations leaders. And I don't think our team would be as effective without amazing operations leaders we have at Amazon. So just to make things a little bit of a reality, let's say you are an operations leader who are managing a region with, let's say, 500 sites, and you have been spending you know x millions of dollars in marketing to get the hires you need week in, week out, and you need 95% accuracy to make sure that everything runs smoothly. And tomorrow I build a model and say like, hey, I've got this model and we've got run this test, and you can get the same number of hires with 50% of the cost, right? And you have to give the go, right? Ultimately, you are standing in front of the business and saying, uh, yeah, we came up with this new strategy. Now, imagine the pressure this person is in, right? Because tomorrow, if we don't get the number of hires, then you are the one who has to explain, like, hey, I gave you the 100% of the budget, you didn't spend it. And now we have this mess, right? And now imagine uh, me coming to you with the insight a few weeks or few months before the holiday shopping period. Are you going to go with my model? Right? I think that's a lot of pressure. And if we are not working very closely and we haven't earned trust with weeks and months of working very closely together, then these decisions don't happen. Right? And so my team has to really deeply understand the realities on the ground on how the operations work. And our operations leaders have to work very closely with our technology to understand what is it that they could trust, what is it that they cannot trust. And we also have the accountability to be able to say, like, not every single problem will be solved with technology, right? Not every single thing I can model and give you the right answer for. So, what is it that we can do and cannot do? And giving every prediction the right level of confidence information um, is how, when you come to these critical big decisions, the operations leaders are able to give us a go ahead. And without them, right, like none of the models my team makes are a reality, and we make no impact if they are not leaning in. And that's where I connect the thing to the culture of the company. If the culture of the company is about data-backed decision making, then people analytics teams can be more effective. And if it's not, then even with the scale of data we have, the issue with scale is I may have high confidence in my information, but stakes are also high, right? Like if I miss, it's a massive miss for a business. So um, it's really important to have that data-backed decision-making culture.
Yeah, and I think you talked about two really important elements there: trust from your stakeholders, effectively your operations leaders, and also the effort that you and the team make to really understand the business, get close to those operations leaders, form strong relationships, build that trust over time. Because the more you understand, the more likely
Yeah.
the models that you
Yes.
provide are actually
Yes.
going to work,
Yes.
and then
Yes.
they're happy,
Yeah.
and then you build trust. And of course, another big element of what you're doing, particularly in a company like technology, um, is Amazon is technology. Is Amazon company like Amazon is technology, and it is playing a huge role in modern recruitment. What are some of the innovations or tools that you've implemented to optimize Amazon's high volume hiring processes?
Happy to talk about that. Things like AWS Connect help us build our own ATS system that can scale and have the fungibility and quick iteration that we need, as well as things like SageMaker help us build models and put them in production. But let me digress a little bit because you know it's most important to solve the right problem, right? And then the technology should be at the end of the journey, right? So let me talk about, like, hey, what is the problem, right? So we have 3,000 plus sites around the world, right? And every week, a site may need a site might tell me, like, hey, I need 5 hires. The week after that, I might need 233 hires, and the week after that, that site may need 37 hires. And the site next to it might say 150 hires, 45 hires, and 555 hires. Right? So you have 3,000 distinct strings of demand coming through. And then we have 3 weeks of heads up to know, like, how much demand will be. So you have a short heads up time, we have unique demand, and then you have the scale of Amazon, right? So that's the problem on one side. On the other side, I have 16 different dials or levers I can pull to get exactly the number of hires, and I need to get 95% accuracy uh, in this operation. So now you have all these moving pieces, and your head can start spinning. So that's the problem. Now let's think about the context, right? So 6 years ago, Amazon used to outsource this hiring. Right? We didn't have an internal team hiring in the hourly space. 6 years ago, we decided, like, okay, let's bring it in house. And in the first year, we needed to double the hiring, right? And imagine doing it for the first time and you have to double. And then in the next 2 years, we had to go 6x, right? Massive growth, right? And a lot of that had to be built based on judgment and subject matter experts. So, about 3 years ago when I joined, we had this massive operation. For example, in marketing, we had 300 experts sitting in different media markets and telling us, like, hey, when to start, when to stop marketing, what channels, how much to spend. And we didn't have all this data captured. So we know we are getting the hires we need, but we don't know the intelligence behind, like, what is the theme? Like, how are we really making decisions? Where are we making good decisions versus not? So the first step was actually capturing all the data, right? Putting this like a lot of the times people really underestimate investment in data and get distracted by shiny AI topics. If you don't invest in data, you are really capping the upside of what you can achieve. So the first year was really about capturing data on what are the inputs people are using to make decisions, how are they making decisions, when do the outcomes actually pan out versus not. And the next step was just to put some simple rules around it, right? Like, hey, what is the common theme across our whole network when certain decisions work versus others don't? So some of the decisions started getting automated through rules. There was still a lot of judgment involved, right? And that alone reduced our cost by 50%, right? And then the year later, we were able to reduce the cost by 90% by taking the rules and replacing them with machine learning, right? So there is this journey, right, of capture the data, simple things first, put it into market, even if it's not perfect, learn from it, and then go to more advanced machine learning models. And even with machine learning models, it's not fully automated. We still have judgment in the right spots. Right? So we've done that transition over time. And when you come to that final stage, and that's where I can talk about our ML ops and SageMaker and how it can help us, you know, run these models at globally for these 3,000 slides at the thousands of hires that we are making that scale and be accurate, right? But it comes at the end of the journey, right, of uh, prototype and iterate over time.
That's really interesting. That's what I was listening to there, Ashish. I was thinking when you know, highlighted the importance of getting the data right and having the right data to support anything like this. And I was just thinking the analogy, you know, it's like having a car with, you know, you can have the best car in the world with all the AI and all the mod cons and everything else, but you
Yes,
don't have the fuel, the
yes,
data,
yes,
could be electricity as well, of course. Now,
yes,
then you're not going to be able
yes.
to take it anywhere. And I think you know that is lost in a lot of the conversations that we hear about AI. Those companies that are best able to take advantage of AI, particularly as we think about HR, are those companies that have invested in those data foundations and are continually looking at those data foundations. You mentioned the number of engineers that you've got in your team, for example. So, you know, I think if those people listening to this taking it away, thinking how they can apply some of what we're discussing, Ashish, in their own organisations, albeit probably at a smaller scale.
Right, and like for example, like data engineering was largest function on my team for a long time, right? Uh, and over time, it's getting more balanced out with software engineering and science, but really, like first few years, data and it's still a critical function, right?
Yeah,
But in terms of size of investment, we really invested in data engineering.
very good. So let's switch a little bit to corporate hiring. Now, you obviously do a lot on the corporate hiring side at Amazon, but obviously not at anywhere near the volume of that you're doing on the hourly paid workers. So, so on the topic of corporate hiring, with people analytics in still in some respects an emerging field, although hopefully
Yeah,
it's less
yeah.
emerging now, but it's still growing fast. What would you say to someone? Sorry, let's start again. Go on corporate hiring at first. So again, less scale, but the need to ensure even more maybe top talent attraction and acquisition. What are you currently doing to ensure that you are acquiring the top talent in the space, but also assessing them in a fair and unbiased manner?
So let me start personally by saying, like, my mission is to minimize guesswork and bias when it comes to people decisions at work. Like that's what drives me, right? And corporate hiring space is where that is probably most applicable. So if you think about our hiring experience today for most companies, um, from candidate perspective, they feel that they are tossing their resume on a pile of thousands of resumes. They don't know if anybody's even going to take a look at it, and they are probably their baseline expectation is not to hear back from anyone when you apply online, right? And they're told like, hey, you need to network with the hiring manager or the recruiter, da 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 da. And then there's a lot of luck involved, and if you even get a fair shot at evaluating what you can do and how does that relate to a job, right? Um, And then on the flip side, if you're thinking about the recruiter, you've got stacks of thousands of resumes, right? It's not practical for you to really evaluate all 1,000 resumes, right? So you put some filters and narrow things down, and you're able to maybe look at a few hundred and 15 to 30 seconds at a time, right? And in that time, it's a really tough job to pick out of that pile really the top candidates, right? And that's where, again, human judgment and machines together can do a better job. So we have automated resume reviews, we have online assessments that we have scaled for like hundreds of job families. So we have 455 job families for which we have online assessments. We ran 6 million plus assessments last year. And the thing I love about assessments is it's an opportunity for candidate to show what they can do, right? Here are the skills that are important for the job. Show me what you can do, right? And so we gave people 6 million plus merit-based shots to get a job at Amazon, right? And for some candidates, that can truly be life changing, and it could be life changing, for the company and our customers because if we hire the top talent who is best suited for that job, then we can make a bigger difference for the customers. Um, and we also have machines helping candidates navigate, right? So each company has different titles and different way they have organized functions. So when candidates come in, they can upload a resume and we can help them direct, like, hey, based on your skills, here are actually the jobs you might be best suited for, here are the levels and families. So there's a lot of technology that can help improve both the candidate experience as well as the recruiter experience to create the best match in the end between the job and the person. And then that's really what we are going for in the corporate space.
Oh, very good. Very good. That's 6 million assessments.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's a lot of data as well, obviously.
Yes, that's a ton of data, and but also requires some incredible subject matter expertise in things like biopsychology, as well as engineering to make sure all you can deploy these assessments and keep it up 24/7 all through the year. So a lot of amazing work that the team is doing behind the scenes.
No, they're really good. So on the topic of corporate hiring, let's turn the lens on people analytics itself, which in some respects is still an emerging field, still growing. What would you say to someone considering a career in this area? And by extension, what would you say are the top skills that you look for when hiring people analytics professionals?
Um, so my pitch for anybody who's maybe on the tech side, business side, to come over to people analytics is the same as we talked about. So like, hey, this is a really mission driven field. You can make 10x, 100x difference in this field. And a lot of the skills that you learn on the business side and the tech side can translate very nicely in this field, right? So it can be a really fulfilling um, endeavor, and you can be in the frontier of lots of problems that haven't been solved yet. So that would be my pitch for somebody considering, and especially at Amazon, you have the scale of data to actually do the similar types of analytics and science that you could do on the business side. In terms of what I would advise people in general, if they're thinking about career in this space, and may not be too different from career in other spaces, is I feel going forward, big wins are going to be at intersection of functions. So let's take data engineering, right? I feel especially not just in people analytics, but with the advances in AI, a key skill that everybody's going to need is data engineering, right? And it's quite scarce actually. We find that finding great data engineers is harder than finding great scientists, just based on the number of professionals in this space. Um, but if you are a great data engineer with advances in tooling from places like AWS and what AI can do these days, you going deep in data engineering alone may not be enough. And we are going to need some people who are like incredibly deep in data engineering. But for most people, if you can marry your skills of data engineering by also understanding the process, understanding the business, then you can make the right decisions on where to put the sensors, what is it that you need to capture, how do you prioritize work, right? And that's going to be most valuable to your end customer. That's what's going to be helping you make the most impact, right? So intersection of those two things. Let's talk about science, right? I talked about, like, in selection space, you need deep expertise in IO psychology. But if you marry that with ML, you can scale so much faster, right? Like, one of the biggest challenges I've heard, in the time I've been in the people analytics space, is like it takes too long for us to build selection mechanisms, right? Like, it takes 18 months, right? Oh my God, like, world changes in 18 months, right? But how can we marry multiple? So, like, we had automated resume review for 20 job families last year, and now we have it for 220, right? Similar scale of growth in other areas like online assessments. So how can we marry different sciences together to scale? Uh, in product, I think that's where probably three intersections come in. I think product as a discipline is really hard to find great product managers. But if you can do product and software and science, that's a killer combination. So it's really, and if you think about where the world is going, right, you are going to need all these three skills to really leverage, harness the goodness that AI can bring you. It's going to be science, it's going to be software, and it's going to be product. So in general, I would say intersection of things is where big wins are. So if you're early in your career, explore versus maximize, right? If you just stay in one function and maximize, you may be limiting your upside long term. You might be better off early in your career going broader and collecting a broader set of skills so that you are building a good foundation for a greater future in the long term.
No, some good advice. And as you said, certainly if we compare it to analytics in other corporate functions like marketing, like finance and operations, people analytics is still fairly nascent in comparison. Our own research at Insight 222 and other research I've seen recently from the likes of Gartner and PwC Saratoga suggests that the people analytics field continues to grow, more people coming to work in that field. Certainly in comparison, I think it was Gartner that said that people
Oh,
analytics is the fastest
that's
growing
awesome.
area of HR,
Great.
which is given
Yeah.
it's 10, 15 years
Yes.
old in most
Yes.
companies and maybe less in many others. That's quite impressive. And the reality is, particularly in teams such as yours, Ashish, you're needing to hire people who aren't currently working in people analytics. So as you said, attracting other analytics professionals into HR, into talent acquisition, into to work with people data, where they can potentially have more impact, as you said as well. Interestingly, maybe it's just two parts of this question as well. What roles are you currently hiring for on your team at Amazon? Um, and then the second part of that, maybe how are the skills and capabilities evolving over time? But the second part is also, where do you envisage maybe in the next 12 months, 18 months that you might be hiring additional skills, maybe new skills into your team?
Yeah. So we have 25 roles open right now. Given the size of the team, we typically hire about 50 people each year. Um, we've got roles in data engineering, as I said, we have a large presence in data engineering globally. We've got software engineers for deploying things like assessments and automated resume reviews. We also have IO psychology roles, as well as data science and machine learning roles. And as always, like I always would look for product people who can do all three, like product science and software. There is always a need for that. So we would have a range of roles available, and I would invite both people who are in people analytics for a long time, as well as who are on the business side, to come take a look, because one of the hesitations people may have from moving on from the business side is uh, the scale of data and access to technology that you may have on the business side. Do you have that on HRS side as well? And like at a company like Amazon, you do, right? So it might be, if you're considering a change, this might be a good place to start, right? And then you can go from there.
If we can talk a little bit about the product management piece, because again, it's an area that we've noticed growing in many people analytics functions around the world. And we've identified a gap in the research that we've done around democratizing data and the adoption of those products as well. And product management plays a really important role in that, doesn't it? Not just around user experience, but it's around making the products easy. Yeah, products easy. I love talk a little bit to the product management piece. That'd be great.
It's incredibly important and incredibly difficult function. So on one side, if you think about the users, they are on this journey about uh, you know data literacy, and then comes science literacy. So what they deeply know is the problems they haven't had today, right? But if you ask them for solutions, they might just tell you, um, "Hey, help me do what I do faster or easier," right? But you may not get the transformative idea from your users, right? So, as a product professional, you have to understand the need, but then also understand the technology to see what is possible, right? To come up with a function, come up with a solution, and then you have to sell that solution to the customer, right? That's also really challenging because they might not believe you, right? And in the end, as I said, they are on the hook to deliver, right? So you paint a picture which may look like a crystal ball, and they might not sign up for that solution. So, like, how do you bridge? You deeply need to understand the technology so that you're not promising a crystal ball, you're promising something real. And at the same time, you have to sell it to the customer so that they believe it too, right? And then once you have that alignment, you have to go build it, right? And in building it, there is such dramatic in curve of improvement in technology that is so, what used to be technical debt over years, you can accumulate technical debt within months now, right? Things you're building your infrastructure on can be obsolete within months. So how do you also stay on the frontier of technology where things are going, to make the right investment decisions and build things right, give yourself optionality uh, to be on the most modern technology. That's the other side of the story. So really, yeah, incredible opportunity for people who can do that. uh, they can really unlock the potential of all the individual functional experts we have if we have great product leadership.
Yeah, and as you said, it's how you get scale, and how you create value ultimately. Um, so, as someone who's been deeply involved and embedded in talent acquisition analytics, and I
Yes,
know you were
yes.
doing similar before you came to Amazon as well, what do you see as the biggest opportunities for people analytics to drive even further impact with regards to talent acquisition?
I think in talent acquisition space, the the biggest problem is quality of hire, right? If we can nail that, I think businesses would be willing to invest a lot more in this space, right? And it's about measuring the quality of hire and then showing you can actually move the needle, right? In general, even if you are just doing, let's say, skill-based hiring, and using best practices, you're probably in the top half of the companies anyway, right? There are a lot of companies who are still not doing skill-based hiring. They're not doing structured interviews, right? These are like proven practices for decades now. So if you're not doing that, do that, right? I think that would be the first step. But even if with skill-based hiring, and given the limited time we have to evaluate talent, few hours, uh, yeah, getting skill-based signals is probably a good way right now. But that still leaves the unknown of, can this candidate put these skills together to deliver uh, the tasks that they need to complete in the environment of this company, in the culture of this company. right? So that remains the unknown, and a lot of the misses we end up having are because people may have the underlying skills but cannot put it together, or maybe cannot put it together in this environment, right? But with AI, I believe we can make real life job previews happen, right? And in that environment, it's a great experience for the candidate to see how it's really like to work in a particular role in a particular company, what they would be asked to do day to day, and can they pull all the skills they have together, both the soft skills and the functional skills, to deliver the solutions that the company needs, right? And that that's where I believe the world is going. And if you're able to do that, then you will be able to measure more accurately a person's ability to do high quality work in that particular job. And it would be better for the candidates as well, because it's a life changing decision to, change a job, move potentially to another place. And then you have all these unknowns that you don't know how are going to pan out, right? So more closer we can get to real life job preview, and I believe with AI we can. I think that would be.
That's the opportunity, I guess, with AI. Because quality of hire, I smile because I was in talent acquisition for quite a long time before moving into people analytics, and we've been talking about quality of hire for such a long time. And I guess quality of hire, for example, in your high volume hiring, is very different to the range of quality, what a quality of hire would be on your corporate hiring as well. So I guess the first thing to do is define what we mean by quality of hire in any for any given role or company, I guess, as well.
And just think about how many opinions and guesses and bias we have in evaluating that, right? So and this is what I'm saying. Like there is so many high leverage unsolved problems in this space. That's why I call it still in the nascency.
But I like what you're saying. If we can preview the role better and maybe the environment better with AI, you would think, again, it's a hypothesis that I guess we'd need to test, but you would think that you would more likely get the right fit for the role, or more often, which I guess, you know, quality of hire, I guess it is something, again, depends on the role, but obviously you want productivity, you probably want retention for a period of time, all those sorts of things. And again, if you're applying for a job, it just makes sense to me that if the more you understand what the job is before you start, the more likely you're going to make the right decision as a candidate, but also the company's going to be able to make the right decision as well.
Sure.
So we'll come back to that in a few years' time, Ashish. I think to see where we're going on that. But if anyone's going to be at the forefront of it, it sounds like you will be. Um, if we look more generally at the field of people analytics, and this leads quite nicely actually. One of the key topics for everyone, business leaders talk about is productivity. We've discussed it in the past. You posted some excellent articles on it a few years ago as well. But for the benefit of listeners, what role can people analytics play, in your opinion, in terms of unlocking productivity at the individual, the team, and maybe the organizational level as well?
Great question. And these days it's pretty easy to jump to AI as the answer for productivity, and I always say it's most important for us to solve the right problem first, right? And get the structure right. And the technology comes at the end, right? Like don't start with technology, right? And speaking more broadly of people analytics, a big part of people analytics is consulting with the business, right? So if you're thinking about organizational level productivity, I still think it is more about how do we make sure we're solving the right problems? How do we make sure we have the right people to solve those problems? How do we make sure those people have the resources to solve the problem, and so on and so forth, right? So making sure we have that structure right, and a lot of those things might be more about having clear decision making mechanisms, right? Uh, Having a great way to do workforce planning to make sure your top talent with the right skills are in the right roles. And there are areas where AI plays a role in that. Uh, but it's not just about AI, right? Like, when I talked about, we cut costs in hourly hiring by 50% and, improved accuracy in the high 90s, that it had nothing to do with AI, right? So it's really important not to be jumping to that end state. Do the right problem solving techniques, like break down the big complex productivity problem into components, make sure that you can solve each of the components, make sure you understand the ecosystem, and you can do system thinking to figure out what you should solve first before you solve next, and what is the knock-on effect of solving one thing on the other. And then be aware of what AI can do in those steps, right? So be aware of AI, and apply that tool when it's the right tool for the job, right? Versus using AI, hammer looking for a nail. That's probably not the right way to approach productivity.
No, it's really interesting, actually, because I mean, when Jonathan and I were writing Excellence in People Analytics, and prior to that, and we weren't the only people saying it as well. I'm not going to claim
Mhm.
ownership on this. When People Analytics was maybe in the mid 2010s, lots of people wanted to jump to the fanciest type of analytics. I want to do organizational network analytics, and we'd always say, well, what's the problem you're trying to solve? As you said, we'll properly define what the problem is, maybe have some questions that you want to answer, some hypotheses that you want to test. And only then, once you've gathered the data together, do you start thinking about, oh, well, what's the solution for this? And that's when AI comes in there, and not, as you said, not a hammer looking for a nail. I like that analogy.
I mean, I'll give you an example. In one of the early roles at Capital One, I inherited a team that was doing people analytics for our software organization, right? And the team was quite burnt out, and the customers were not very happy about the outcomes. And the team had received 400 different requests for projects through the previous year before I joined. And they had all great science and data engineering, like they had applied the best available tools at their disposal, but nobody was happy, right? So I was like, okay, in that situation, try to go as high up as possible in terms of your customer end. So we went to the CIO and asked him, like, okay, you're funding this team, right? Tell me, because of the work we have done, is there something you're doing differently this year compared to last year, right? And he could claim nothing. There was nothing that the tech organization was doing differently because of the 400 things we did last year. And the team is burnt out, customers, nobody's happy, right? Now, I said, okay, all right. So what if we did two things, right? And really made a difference in two things? And what would be your two things? And at that time, it was about hiring and retention. And all right, so we're going to staff 60% of the team on these two problems, right? And then there's always this executive concierge, questions from up top that come, and you got to have like 10% for that, and then the rest is KTLO. All right. So if that is what we did, we might get two. That's better than zero. Now, this is a risky endeavor, right? Like you might have this conversation, and you might be like, okay, I actually don't need this team because like I haven't done anything different. But so it's a delicate conversation. But at the end of it, when we actually focused on those two problems, and we were able to increase the throughput of software engineering by 50%, but just focusing on that piece, solving that problem deeply, then there were conversations about like, hey, how can we fund this team for a third priority, right? So really, like, if we had stayed in this, like, solve 400 problems with top technology, we may not have actually made any impact, right? So that focus, solving problem, the right way, and maybe AI is the answer to some of those problems. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's sometimes 4 week average can solve your problem, and that you don't need AI. And so right tool for the job.
It's really important, actually. I mean, so many times we hear about analytics teams that are burning out because they're just doing too much, but they're not having much impact, and it's because they're doing too much and not prioritizing the right things. And that's such a great example of doing that. And that's again how you build trust with your internal customers, isn't it? What are their key challenges they're trying to solve for? Help them solve for them. They'll work with you more, and actually it's the business that will help you get more investment in the team, whether it's people, technology, other resources. So yeah, really good example. Yeah. There as well. So I'm going to go to the question of the series, Ashish, now, and then I'm going to come back and just ask for you maybe to give some sort of key things for people to take away for them. So the question of the series, for those first time listeners, this is something we ask everyone in a series of the Digital HR Leaders podcast. And it really is, we're going to talk about AI a little bit here, Ashish.
Yeah.
How
Okay.
can HR use AI to improve employee experience and well-being? And if you want to extend that into candidate experience, please feel free to do so.
The one way we are thinking about this is where is human touch truly needed and truly beneficial, right? Um, and what is taking away from humans being able to spend that time in that human touch experience. So think about recruiting, right? On one side, there's a candidate who could be making a life-changing decision, right? Could be uprooting their family and moving somewhere, or being at a job they're doing really well, but they're interested in something different. These are big decisions, and it's really important to have somebody you can trust on the other side, right? And then that is really where humans can differentiate. Which is, at least personally for me, talking to a machine may not feel the same way. Um, but uh, recruiters today have to do so much admin work, right? They're like 30-40% of their plate can be admin work, and that takes them away from being connected to the candidate, right? And how can AI take off that stuff from their plate to make sure, not just in, let's say, operations roles, even in data engineering, right? I remember back in the day working on mainframe and, other technologies, it was a bear to understand where your data is, where it's coming from. Today with AWS, it's a it's like having a conversation with your data, right? Understand the metadata behind, like where is this field, what does it mean, what is the range, what is the source, what is the latency. I can have a conversation with my data. That is just phenomenal experience for a data engineer. And now they are freed up to do the engineering work they need to do versus the admin work of just understanding the basics, right? So I think that's how we are thinking about, like, freeing up our talent to add value in spaces where they can truly uh, differentiate and then take off the admin.
Really good. Well, we got to the last question, Ashish. Really enjoyed this conversation, and I think hopefully listeners will really be able to take a lot from it. But for those people listening that are working in organizations that are maybe just beginning their journey to embed analytics into recruitment or talent acquisition, or maybe want to take it to the next level, what advice would you give? Where should they start, and what are the key success factors? And I appreciate that not the same success factors don't necessarily apply to every organization.
So I think there are a few different patterns, right? So one pretty well-known pattern is types of analytics. So you could have descriptive, right? Like, hey, what is happening, right? Diagnostic, like, why is it happening? Predictive, like, what will happen? And then prescriptive, what should I do about it, right? So um, people analytics teams evolve in that direction as they have, more time under their belt, more data, more size of the team. They can move. Usually, everybody starts with descriptive, right? Now, that is one model. Now, the thing I would add to that is, rather than going descriptive on everything, a lot of people analytics teams I see do tons of reporting for everything under the sun, right? So they are taking this descriptive piece and going really broad. I would actually highly recommend people to go deep in few problems. So don't do reporting for everything. Pick two problems or one problem that business really cares about solving this year, and go deeper in that problem and make a difference in that problem. Because let's say, this year it might be about workforce planning. If you can really make a difference there, then your team will get funded to solve another problem and another problem. But it's, from the business perspective, it's really about, are you making an impact to the bottom line? And if you can get there, that's going to be much better than going broad on descriptive and then broad on diagnostic and so on and so forth.
I think it's again great advice. It's less about the sophistication of the analytics, and it's more about the importance of the problem that you're helping to solve. And as you build as a team and you build your capabilities, of course you're able to use more sophisticated analytics and technology as part of your product suite. But I've seen, and I'm sure you have as well, I've seen many people do quite sophisticated analytics, but they're not solving the right problem. I remember when everyone was doing attrition analytics in the mid 2010s, people would spend 6 months testing and perfecting an algorithm to predict attrition, and then they didn't get any traction for it. And when you asked them if attrition was a problem in their business, the answer was no. So you're solving the wrong problem, basically. So really good advice there, Ashish. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today and really learn about the brilliant work that you and your team are doing at Amazon. I'm not sure we've had anyone who's had the responsibility for the scale that you've got in terms of hiring. So I think there's lots of things I think listeners better pull out of this conversation today. Before we wrap up, where can listeners find out more about you and learn about the work you're doing and you and your team are doing at Amazon? And maybe, is there somewhere they can go if someone's thinking, okay, I'd like to work with Ashish and his team as well?
So best way to find me is on LinkedIn. And best way to work with us is go to the Amazon website and search ITA, Intelligent Talent Acquisition. So if you search ITA in quotes, you'll get the direct match for 25 roles that we are hiring for today. I'm sure there'll be more coming up very soon.
Brilliant. And we'll put that in the show notes. But basically, go to the Amazon site, search ITA, Intelligent Talent Acquisition, and you'll see the roles that Ashish was talking about earlier. So, Ashish, thank you very much. I look forward to bumping into you, hopefully, at a conference in the next few months as well.
And thank you so much for having me.
In this series, we will be speaking to a range of senior leaders who are pushing a data-driven and digital HR agenda. Make sure that you subscribe via your podcast app of choice and also via our YouTube channel for free and regular interviews with the digital HR leaders of the future.